If you're not using Ironclad for contracts, you could be leaving millions on the table without knowing it. Every contract holds renewal dates, pricing terms, and obligations you can't afford to miss. But good luck finding them when it matters. Ironclad's AI instantly surfaces what matters so you can act before opportunities slip away. That's why they're trusted by OpenAI, L'Oreal, and Salesforce. Find the savings hiding in your contracts at ironcladapp.com/podcast. That's ironcladapp.com/podcast.
When was the last time you felt in control of your business finances? Expenses tracked, invoices sent, taxes ready. That's where Found comes in. Found brings your banking, bookkeeping, invoicing, and taxes together in one simple app. Manage expenses, invoice clients, send payments, and prep for tax time right where you bank. Join the hundreds of thousands who have already streamlined their finances with Found. Open a Found account for free at found.com. That's FOUND.com. Found is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services provided by Lead Bank, member FDIC.
Welcome to Under One Roof MTL, where we are demystifying home ownership 1 week at a time. My name is Robin Flynn, joined as always by Fred Pichette and Martin Spalding of Fred and Martin Mortgages. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Robin.
Robin, today is the day. 3 p.m. Patriots against the Broncos. 6:30 Rams against the Seahawks. We want to go around. Who is going to the Super Bowl? We'll say hi to LJ first, but I want to hear everyone's predictions.
LJ Aguinaga of LJ Realty is the most important thing about this show is our Super Bowl predictions, of course. LJ?
How you doing? Super Bowl predictions. You know what? Let's take it old school. Let's bring it back with the Patriots. It's been a long time since we've seen them go all the distance, so I'd be curious to see what we can do, especially after the Belichick era.
Yeah, and I think the Seahawks will join them with the Super Bowl.
Patriot, Rams, and the Patriots are going to take the Super Bowl.
All right. You heard it here first, folks. Let's get to our trivia question of the week, brought to you by Felix and Norton Cookies. You can visit their store at the Blue Haven Shopping Center, 3705 St. John's Boulevard in DDO. The first person to text in the correct response to 514-790-0800 will receive cookies from Felix and Norton delivered straight to their door. Our question this week, what is a special assessment when you own a condo? Now, if you listen to this show regularly, we did a whole feature on condos 2 weeks ago. So this would be your reward for being a good listener who pays good attention. You would know the answer to this question. If you think you know it, 514-790-0800. Please include your name so we can give you a shout out on the air as well. What is in the news this week? Let's start with the big story of the week, gentlemen. Inflation ticked up to 2.4% for the month of December. Is this cause for concern? We'll start with you, Martin.
Not at all. Prices rose a bit in December, mostly due to temporary seasonal factors. Overall, inflation is still under control. The important inflation measures are improving. The Bank of Canada is not going to budge. Interest rates are going to stay. We've been saying this a lot. It's going to be a boring year. It's going to be a stable year. Interest rates are not going to go anywhere. Fixed mortgages that are influenced by the bond market did not react. And variable rate mortgages, it's going to stay the course. Maybe near the end of the year, we may see some relief. But for now, nothing to be alarmed about.
Well, I think, Martin, it's early to say that interest rate will not go nowhere. We only in January, and it's early in the year, and we never know. And maybe fixed rate could rise a little bit more. I hope it's going to remain the same, but I'm not convinced, that it's going to stay like that.
Well, just like we're going to bet on the Super Bowl, let's bet on race. Put the money where your mouth is, Mr. Pichette.
Well, anyway, I just think that the fixed rate hopefully will remain the same, but maybe the bond market could increase and it could probably brings the fixed rate up again a little bit, but not too much.
LJ, you had a
My-
say about this on Instagram. Do you want to?
Yeah.
What is your reaction?
So 2.4%, let's get a little bit more color on this. So first of all, the biggest reason why this is up, because it's comparing December 2024 to December 2025, right? So one of the biggest drivers here is the fact that we had the GST rebate last year. So immediately when you take off 5% from every single expense, all of a sudden we really have something playing in the favor one way or another. So that's why this 2.4 uptick really isn't significant. There is that blanket GST rebate that we had last year that's really the biggest driver here. The other thing that is interesting is that what's kept inflation down right now is actually the fact that gas prices are down. If we had removed gas from the equation or energy from the equation, inflation would have been closer to 3%. So it is interesting to see what's happening in the rest of the world with Venezuela, with Canada, with honestly everywhere right now, and how this is playing an impact and a role in our economy. One step further, I kind of took a step back and saw inflation for the entire year of 2025. And that was actually at 2.1%, which is really pretty much exactly where the government of Canada wants it to be. And it's actually the lowest inflation we've had in the last 5 years since 2020. So, to put things into perspective, inflation was definitely under control, we could say, compared to really the roller coaster we've been living for the last 5 years.
Given that information, Montreal home sales did increase. In fact, according to a CTV News article, home sales in Montreal have surged 67% in the last 5 years. So, what is driving these price increases? 67% sounds like a really big number. That sounds like a very good thing for sellers, right, LJ?
100%, right? You average it out, annualized at 13.4%. It's better than the stock market's been doing. It's a pretty spectacular rate. Now, a lot of that was in 2021, 2022. We saw a huge spike. We saw up to 25%. Then we saw it pull back a little bit. And now we've seen it stabilize in that 7 to 10% increase, which is very significant, especially when we're looking at the price of a property. This is a huge impact one way or another. So, the drivers are the fact that, I mean, we had low interest rates a while back. We've had people who still need to get into properties. We see where the economy's been heading overall and how the market's been performing. We've had immigration that was up for the last 5 years as well, so we had a limited supply. Vacancy rates were down, and all of this put together, even with the high interest rates, has led to this much of a significant appreciation over that time period. So that's kind of what we're seeing. If interest rates stay similar to where they are right now, we expect to see another strong year, somewhere in that 5 to 10% appreciation this year. But ultimately, rates are going to be the biggest driver as to where we see appreciation this year.
LJ, is it fair to say that Quebec, Montreal is an anomaly compared to the rest of Canada?
Anomaly to a certain extent, in the sense that we haven't gotten hit so hard. We're always insulated one way or another. We don't have the same highs, we don't have the same lows. So whereas Toronto may have seen, I don't know, 40% appreciation in one year, we saw 24% appreciation in one year. We're always more modest in either direction. Toronto dropped 30% valuations at one point. We dropped 10% valuations at that same time. So we do things a little bit differently, but really the panic almost and what we've been seeing across the board has been primarily driven by the condo markets in Toronto, Vancouver, and the major markets. When you take a step back and actually look at single family homes, those have been performing quite well, to be honest. So in some markets, yes, they pulled back. Obviously, they're back to even or even growing right now. But if we were to take away the downtown condos that were especially affected by the foreign buyers ban that came into play there, um, overall, Canadian prices have been pretty solid across the board, but Quebec in particular has done well because of that insulation factor that we're talking about.
So, how much money do you actually need to be able to buy a home in Montreal in 2026? This is the age old question, you know? How much money do I need to earn? How much money do I have to put aside? And I guess the answer is usually, well, it depends. It depends on what kind of home you're looking for, depends on what kind of down payment you have, depends on your credit score. But is it possible to give some sort of answer on how much money you need to be making in 2026?
Well, so Fred and I worked on some scenarios. And so we use the assumptions that it's a 5 year fixed mortgage amortized over 25 years. So if the assumptions are, so we use three income brackets. So we use 75K, 100K, and 150K household income. So what can you afford? So the assumptions were the rate we use 399, 5 year fixed, 25 years amortization. Remember your stress test on that. So 5.25. We use GDS 39%. We use TDS, total debt service, and we assume there's no other debts. So if your income is 75,000, with using those assumptions, your mortgage can be around 349 and gives you a purchase price with 20% down of 435,000. So where does that land for you in Montreal? Well, that's condo territory in Montreal. Most single family homes are out of reach. So that's 75K, 100K. It gives you a mortgage of around 468,000 and a purchase price with 20% down of 585. Where do you land there? So that's entry level single family, location dependent, obviously, or a strong condo option. You know, we've heard LJ say that condos right now, average price are about 435. So if we go to the top end of our scenarios, 150,000, you can get a maximum mortgage of about 700,000, purchasing price around 885. Where do you land? Well, that gives you solid purchasing power, but you're still under that 1 million mark that many buyers are looking for. So you got to remember the stress test will probably pull down your purchasing power between 10 and 15%. So just because you think that with 150,000 at 399, you should be able to afford more. Remember, at 399, you're being stress test, so your qualification rate is 5.25.
Yeah, also, Martin, this could work for a refinance. You know, if people has equity in their home and they have that also income, they could qualify for the number you just give, like if they have enough equity.
Yeah. So if you're purchasing or you're refinancing, those are the scenarios with the approximate household incomes that we're looking at. Obviously, there are a lot of variables, so this is really top line stuff, but we'd be happy to run the numbers if you give us a call.
And that's the most important part. Take the time to sit down with your trusted mortgage brokers like Fred and Martin to really understand what your situation is, to pull your credit. It's happened to me. It's happened to a ton of clients. You had this old lingering cell phone bill that you had closed, but they didn't close it on time. And now there's this little red blemish on your report that is going to be a pest ultimately when you're trying to get your mortgage. So by doing it early, by getting started right away, you're really putting yourself in a position to succeed and ensure that you can take care of any little things that might come up that are non-problems, but are going to take a couple weeks to be settled up.
Yeah. So building on that comment, check TransUnion, check Equifax, and do an audit of your credit reports on a yearly basis.
Still to come, what should you do if your house has been sitting on the market for over a month and you still don't have any offers? LJ answers that question after we check traffic at the CJD 800 Traffic Center. This is Under One Roof. I'm Robin. That's Fred. That's Martin. That is LJ. What do you do when your listing goes stale? What should sellers do if their home is on the market but it just isn't getting any offers? LJ, you are the very best person to talk to about this. So what is a stale listing? How long does your house have to be sitting on the market before you would be getting concerned?
I would say that if the home has been on the market for a month's time and you've had less than 4 visits, an average of 1 a week, there's probably something that's not lining up right now. If you're in 2 months on market territory and again you haven't gotten an offer yet, something's not lining up. Something's not right. Right now, the average time on market, I think, for single family homes in the greater Montreal area was somewhere in the 30 to 38 range, 35 to 38 day range. So if you're beyond that, obviously something's not being well received. There's a couple of things that we like to study when we're looking at a listing to understand the reasoning. And it's a variety of reasons. The first and biggest reason always, which sellers never want to hear, is that there's a pricing issue. Right? The property wasn't listed for fair market value. They believed that their emotional value of the home made it worth significantly more than what it truly was worth in the market. They wanted to try a price. And unfortunately, in the current market conditions that we have, a lot of buyers have had reservations about coming in with what's considered a low ball offer. They don't want to insult anybody. They don't want to be mean ultimately. And they're coming in with very conservative offers in the sense that they will wait until you reduce your price before coming in with an offer that may be deemed low ball. Now, it's not everybody, but I would say that roughly 9 out of 10 clients that I speak to, they say, "Oh, you know what, LJ? No, we'll just wait. We'll give it a month, and maybe they'll lower their price. It'll be closer to what we feel it's actually worth, and at that point in time, we'll be ready to submit an offer." So the be all end all is always going to be price. The next thing is the photos. I'm still surprised how often in 2025 I go look at listings and they've been shot with an iPhone 6 in portrait mode, not landscape, without the proper lighting. There's so many things that I can say about this, but ultimately you need to be able to really showcase your property. It's like online dating. It's really the first impression you're going to put out there, and it needs to be setting the right tone for what the home has to offer. So solid pictures are going to do you a world of good. If your photos are solid and you really don't feel pricing is the issue, sometimes there's a mistake on the listing. It's happened before. We're all human. It's even happened to us. We usually catch it within the first 24 hours. But when we're doing a review, we're like, oh, darn, we didn't mark the garage feature. And sometimes, most of the time, people are filtering by features, ultimately, right? So they need 3 bedrooms. They need to be in Beaconsfield, for example, and they needed to have 2 car garages. Well, maybe you put that they had 1 garage instead of 2. And all of a sudden, all the people who are looking for that budget that is representative of this type of a home aren't seeing it because it's listed as 1 and they have a 2 garage minimum filter. stuff of this nature. Sometimes you have a central AC or central heating system, and that wasn't disclosed on the listing. And some clients are very firm on they need it to be a central system. They don't want no AC and they don't want wall-mounted AC units, right? So making sure that you have reviewed your listing with your realtor to make sure that all of these little details that sometimes sound trivial, but really are super important, because when we sit down and we're building a search with a client, we're usually filtering through price, bedrooms, bathrooms, parking, size of the property, size of the lot possibly, year of construction. All of these things play a major role in the filtering system that we're usually using. Pool, no pool, all that kind of stuff. So by making sure that the listing is representative of what your property actually has to offer, that the photos are on point, and that you're in the right price band, sometimes it's as silly as your home is probably worth, let's say, 745, and you said, no, LJ, I want to try for 760. And people really go in search bands, and they will go up to 750, for example. And after that 750, you are not really significantly higher, but that 10 grand makes all the difference. And all of a sudden you have disappeared from a plethora of clients' searches again. So you need to be in the right price band that's representative of what your home is actually worth, so that the right people are seeing it, and that you're getting the traction, the visits, and ultimately the engagement on the property that's going to lead to the offers. That is what's going to effectively sell your property for the best price in the shortest amount of time with the best conditions.
My question, LJ, it has to do with stuff. We tend to collect stuff. So for yours is curb appeal. Sometimes I drive by houses and I go, oh my God, there's a dump around the house. And then you go into the house and there's just so much stuff. I mean, if you're going to sell the place, you're going to have to purge. So you may as well purge before you start showing the house. What are your thoughts on that?
100%, right? The property has to be in the best showing condition, and that is usually a home that's decluttered, that has space to walk through. As humans, we're naturally curious beings, and because of that, if ever you have a lot of stuff in the property, we get distracted. Oh, what's this trinket? What's that? What are these photos? Where'd they go to school? What's this degree from? All that stuff, which is totally normal stuff to have in a home, distracts the buyers from the home. The size of the bedrooms, the possibility, envisioning their future here with their families and their children, and everything the home has to offer. So decluttering is a huge part of it. We actually have a PDF and a video that we send out to all of our sellers before we schedule our photos. And in the PDF, it's basically 2 pages of everything that we expect them to do so the property looks its best and in the best condition possible. And then we have a video for the interior and for the exterior that really showcases step by step what do we mean by these things. So making the bed properly, removing, depersonalizing the home, making sure that you've removed maybe the barbecue cover so that things really look clean on the outside if you got a beautiful patio. So there's all these little steps that we do to make sure that our clients know what it should look like. And it's much easier to make the home presentable if they have a reference. And that's why we provide the reference, because a lot of times people are like, well, to me this is clean, and it's okay to you, it's clean, there's no harm on that, but that's not photo ready. And we really need to make sure that it's photo ready so that we get back to, again, that great first impression, and then we get the visits that we want to lead to the best offer possible for you.
How do you work with families who have young children? So it's very easy to tidy up and hide toys for photos, right? But the reality is when you're living with young children, the house gets messy several times a day. So how does that work? What is the, notice time for a visit, for example? What are your recommendations to parents who, perhaps have little tricycles around the house and things like that? Do you have to hide absolutely everything before visits?
No. So there's 2 things that we do to mitigate this. The first thing is that we'll usually list the property on a Monday. We'll do our entire marketing blast throughout that week, and we're going to start visits at the open house on the Sunday. That way, the family has the time to really get organized. They're not prepping in the middle of the week when it's a bit more difficult, obviously, with school and whatnot, pickups, etc. And they can really get everything ready to go for Sunday again. Maybe they'll have a cleaning team come in the morning. Maybe they'll do it on Saturday. Whatever it is, they can get organized and they can go out to see maybe grandparents or friends and family on Sunday so that the home is impeccable. Now, once we've gotten through that first blast, we are going to have regular visits, and those can happen. And there's always going to be a minimum of 24-hour notice prior to those visits. We usually ask for more if families have young children, and then we'll usually even put a visit schedule on the listing. So we'll say like, hey, because there's young children in the property, we're only going to be able to accommodate visits on these days or between these times. And that way it's easier, so you're not every day trying to prepare and hustling around the home to pick everything up. And again, it's not going to be in the same condition as the photos, because photo ready is really like the best possible presentation, but the home has to be presentable. The toys, you have to be able to walk around the property. It's okay that there's toys. It's okay that the home is lived in, but it does have to be neat and organized. So that might come along with maybe clearing out 50% of the toys that you have because you have so many because we accumulate so much stuff and keeping 50%. And it's good for kids to be rotating these toys in and out so they don't always have so many things to choose from. They can really use something, get bored of it, rotate it in, rotate it out. I believe that's part of the Montessori framework. So, yeah.
Beside the photo aspect of the listing, is it possible if it's on Centris or MLS for too long, there's a problem with the property, or does that something happen a lot of times?
Definitely. There could be a problem with the property, but ultimately, there's a right price for every problem, right? So if there is, let's say there's a foundation issue and we know that the home is going to require $80,000 worth of foundation work. Well, we're going to have to apply a discount to the property's price in order for it to come back to fair market value, given this work that needs to be done. And again, it's going to come forth with the appropriate seller's declaration, making sure that you've documented everything properly. But there could be a problem. There is a price for that problem. And that's where it kind of comes into.
If you are thinking about buying or selling a home, give LJ a call at 514-500-4040. Coming up, what are the most commonly asked mortgage questions? Fred and Martin will share the tea with you after the news. This is Under One Roof MTL on CJAD 800. I'm Robin Flynn with Fred Bichette and Martin Spalding of Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Aguinaga of LJ Realties. What are the most commonly asked mortgage questions? Fred and Martin get a lot of questions from a lot of people every day. So let's find out what are some of the most commonly asked questions. Martin, we'll start with you.
Okay, well, we picked 5 for this week, but I think this is going to become a regular feature because we have a ton of questions and they tend to be recurrent. So the first one is, if I take out a reverse mortgage, can I lose my house? We get that all the time. Short answer, no, as long as you follow the rules. Reverse mortgages are available to homeowners 55 years and older. You remain the legal owner of your house at all times. There are no required monthly mortgage payments. The lender cannot force a sale as long as you live in the house as a principal residence, pay your municipal and school taxes, maintain home insurance, and keep the property in reasonable condition. So when is the loan repaid? When the house is sold or you move out permanently. So let's say you're older and you move to a retirement home, or the last borrower passes away. Important protection in Canada. Reverse mortgages in Canada include a negative equity protection. You and your estate will never owe more than the home's fair market value at time of sale. So the answer is no, you're not going to lose your house if you take out a reverse mortgage.
Perfect. All right. Fred, what's another question that you guys hear often?
Well, a question that I got often is, hey, Fred, should I take a HELOC? Or what's the difference between a mortgage and a HELOC? Well, the answer first, both are secure against your home. That's very important. It is a mortgage, it's secure on your property. But both have different purposes. Usually if you're first time home buyers, you buy with 5 or 10% down payment. We're not talking about a HELOC. We're talking about a mortgage. A mortgage has a fixed and a variable interest rate. Also, they have a regular monthly payment that pays towards principal and interest. Obviously, at the beginning of your term, you pay more towards the interest and less towards the principal. Also, with a mortgage, the balance decreases slowly because you pay a portion every month to the principal. And it has a term and an amortization period. On the other hand, a HELOC, it stands for Home Equity Line of Credit. It's a revolving credit. It's actually almost like a credit card at a lower interest rate. A HELOC gives you access to the equity of your house without you most of the time breaking your mortgage, or it's a product that combines a mortgage portion with a HELOCs together. You could use it for, a HELOC could be used for, I would say, short term, but also for renovation, pulling out some equity to invest in another property. Some people using to go on vacation, whatever it's good for you for. That's a HELOC. I'll give you an example. Also an HELOC, what I could say is it's very flexible. You could only pay the interest every month. It's like a credit card. You could almost leave the balance there and make the minimum payment. The danger with a HELOC is you need to be very responsible because If you start tapping in your line of credit, it's like a credit card. You're increasing the amount and it's getting harder to pay back. But it could be very useful for certain people like renovation. Let me give you quickly an example. If you have a mortgage, let's say a property worth 800,000, you have a mortgage of 500,000, you could easily have an HELOC for 100 grand on the side as a safety net. And it's something not for everyone. I just have to say,
Absolutely. Martin, what's another question that you guys get asked?
Okay. Can I buy a home with only 5% down in Canada? Yes, but there's a nuance to that. So currently, if the house is under 499,999.99, 5% works. But as soon as you cross the threshold of 500,000, everything above 500,000 is at 10%. So 5% on the first 500,000, 10% on the portion between 500, and the rules have changed, and now up to 1.5 million. Anything above 1.5 million is now 20%. So what happens is if you purchase a house with less than 20% down, you have to factor in mortgage insurance. So you have to deal with one of the three insurers, CMHC, Sagen, or Canada Guaranteed. You also have to pass the stress tests. You must be owner occupied. And the mortgage insurance is there to protect the lender, not you. So if you purchase a house for, let's say, 1.2 million for this example to work, you got 5% on the 500,000, that's 25,000. So 700,000 at 10%, that's 70,000. So your actual minimum down payment is 95,000. So it's more than that 5% that we talked about, because the 5% only applies to the first 500,000. And on top of that, in liquidity, you got to remember you need money for the closing costs. 1.5% of the purchase price has to be in liquidity. That covers things like the welcome tax, the notary fees, moving expenses, your first mortgage payment. You need to have that money. So minimum down payments will get you approved, but you got to look at the monthly affordability, because yeah, you can buy a house for 5% down, but if you're tapped and you put everything into the house, you'll become house poor. So how much are you going to enjoy that house if all you do is eat crap dinner every night? I come back to my crap dinner example all the time. Maybe we'll switch from crap dinner to beans. Everyone likes beans.
Or ramen.
Unser Akkommen is
Yeah. Fred, what's another question that you hear very often in your line of work?
Oh, I love this one. People say, "Hey, Fred, if I buy a rental property, can I use the rental income to help to qualify?" And the answer is yes, obviously, but not all of it. I often get that comment from our clients saying, "Well, if my mortgage is 3,000 per month and my rental income it's 25 or 2,800 a month, it pays by itself." Yes, you're right, it pays by itself. But sadly, it doesn't work like that to qualify. It wouldn't be too easy to say, "Listen, I just have a shortfall of 200. I'm making 50,000 a year. It's easy to qualify. Why I can't qualify for that?" Well, I'll explain you how rental income is treated quickly. Like, typically, lenders and banks consider 50% of the gross rental income, and they add that income to your current income to help you to qualify. But in the meantime, they keep all the expense of the building, which is 50%. It's not the best way to qualify, to be quite honest. If you have a very high income, it's maybe the easiest way to qualify. But if you have a decent income, you may not qualify. The other way to qualify is, we call that the rental offset. When rents offset the mortgage payment and qualification. And this is different from one bank to another. Like, I'll give you an example. Banks like Scotia and Desjardins or helps a lot rental buyers with that offsets. What else I could say about that? Um, what's affect also your qualification with rental income is how much down payment you put down. If you put 20%, it's conventional. You have to put 20% if you're not owner occupied. But if you're owner occupied, then you could sometimes put as 5% for a duplex and 10% as a 3 unit purchase. Like this question, I get it all the time, and it's a good one because it's not that easy as people think.
Okay, quickly before we wrap up, what's a fifth question that you guys hear all the time, Martin?
Okay, so we'll go really quickly. What's the difference between an insured and a conventional mortgage? An insured is when you put less than 20% down and you got to get mortgage insurance. A conventional mortgage is when you put 20% down, more than 20% down for the purchase. The biggest difference is when you've got an insured mortgage. Generally, the rates are a little bit lower, but you have to factor in the insurance premium. With a conventional mortgage, you're putting 20% down, so the rate might be a little bit higher, but over the length of your mortgage, you'll pay less in interest.
To find out more about your lending options, or if you have some questions that we didn't answer today, you can get in touch with Fred and Martin by visiting them on their website at fredandmartin.com. Coming up, our property of the week, plus the answer to our trivia question of the week. The answer to that after we check traffic at the CJD 800 Traffic Center. This is Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. I'm Robin, that's LJ, that's Fred, that is Martin. We highlight a different property every week on this show. LJ, what part of town are you taking us to this week?
I am taking you over to the lovely Griffintown, really next door to where we were last week, to be honest. Today we're going to be checking out 425A Rue de Versailles in the vibrant neighborhood of Griffintown, but Little Burgundy adjacent. This stylish two-bedroom unit offers a spacious layout, sleek finishes, an open kitchen, and a private west-facing balcony, perfect for soaking in breathtaking sunsets. You'll love the light, the location, and the lifestyle, with easy access to the Lachine Canal, grocery stores, metros, cafes, restaurants, and downtown. So call us today at 514-500-4040 to book your visit. This property in particular was completely renovated when my clients took over possession. They've been so meticulous with the care of it. It's honestly been this little baby that everyone in the family used. First, it was their kids for university. Then the parents used it when they moved back to Montreal. Then the daughter stayed in there for the next 2 years before she got married and bought our own house. So it's been this family treasure for them for the last probably about 13 years. And what's really cool about it is that even though, if you're unfamiliar with the street, you're pretty much on Notre Dame, you're just recessed about 50, 75 meters from Notre Dame, right behind Shea almost. So you're in the heart of all of the action. You've got Rockaberries, you've got Shea, you've got Mama, you've got Lime, a nice Asian restaurant that I personally love in the area. And you don't have the noise in Notre Dame because you have that little setback ultimately. So it's a great little spot. If you want more information, reach out to me. Very easy to show, but really looking for the perfect buyer for it right now.
When you're showing a house, I've walked into houses in the middle of summer and the fireplace is roaring and smells like baked bread. Does that work?
I would say baked bread. Really, the hack these days is a little bit of cookie, right? So you can get the Pillsbury cookie dough, put that in the oven. The cookie dough smell is so fantastic, honestly. So that's definitely a go-to. And then fireplace in the winter, in the fall can definitely be nice. In the summer, definitely wouldn't do that. But if you do have a fireplace that is conformed to the current municipal regulations, you can definitely do that.
Awesome. Let's get to the answer to our trivia question of the week, shall we? Brought to you by Felix and Norton. The question this week was, what is a special assessment when you own a condo? A condo special assessment is a one-time fee that is charged to the owners in addition to their regular condo fees to cover major unexpected expenses or shortfalls in the reserve fund. So that would include things like large-scale repairs, like if the roof needed to be replaced, a foundation issue, the elevators, or unforeseen damages like flooding or even lawsuits. Anything basically that was not budgeted for that the reserve fund is unable to cover. That would be a special assessment. So congratulations to Maxine in Ville Saint Laurent for correctly answering that question. How often do special assessments happen? Like if you buy a condo, is this something you should be preparing for mentally? Or if you have a good reserve fund and a well-managed condo, you're probably in the clear.
Well, you just said it, Robin. I mean, that's the importance of the contingency fund, the fond de prévoyance, because the healthier that is when an assessment comes along, sometimes it can be subsidized buy your contingency fund. So when you buy a condo or when you buy a townhouse, make sure you check those things, because special assessments are probably the thing that homeowners or condo owners or people who own townhouses hate the most, because they tend to be hefty and you tend to get blindsided when they appear.
I'm going to go one step further than that and highlight the asset management plan, which is something that came into effect back in 2022, but really only has taken shape, I'd say, last year with most ownerships. And that really is a plan over the course of the next 25 years for all major repairs, renovations to come, with a cost for every single item adjusted for inflation that allows the syndicates to start budgeting properly. So when you have that done, you have so much more visibility on what's coming down the pipeline, and you have so much more clarity on the fact that your condo fees are actually going to be sufficient for these upcoming things. If they don't have that done, you're ultimately going at it blind. So that's a huge red flag for any condo building right now.
Actually, we could probably do a feature, because I've just taken over the condo association board and where I live, and there are 21 units, and I can tell you there's a lot of work. The condo fees are very low, and we're going to have to migrate those upwards to build up the fund, because if we don't, the building is about 15 years old, and that's when things start to go sideways. You know, whether it's the garden membraning above the garage, So this morning we went with an electrician because our 4 heating units in the garage weren't working. And no one noticed. It was freezing in there. And every time the floors were wet, they would never dry. So we had a guy come in, and you know what it was? It wasn't the heating units. It was the batteries in the thermostats that hadn't been changed. So these 4 units were just sitting idle, and it was freezing. It was like a meat locker in our garage. And all we had to do is change the batteries. So regular maintenance. And so now that I'm actually learning how to run a facility, it's going to be interesting to see what I'm going to learn and the questions I'm going to have for our property manager, LJ Aguinaga.
That's pretty much it for us for this week. If you have questions about property management, mortgages, real estate, if you want to have your answer featured on the show, you can always email us at underoneroofmtl@gmail.com. You can also reach out to LJ, Fred, and Martin individually. LJ, where do people go to reach out to you?
The best place to go if you want to speak to me or book a meeting with me, go to meetwithlj.com. Easiest place to grab a meeting with me. You'll pop up my calendar. You can look at your calendar, and from there we can lock it in right away. If not, you can check me out on all socials with the handles LJ Aguinaga. That's LJAGUINAGA, or LJ Realties, IES at the end. You can also call or text me at the office at 514-500-4040. And if you are looking to free up some of your time and you have a couple of revenue properties or even condos and you're unsure about how you want to handle them moving forward, reach out to us. My property management company would be more than happy to help you out, give you a helping hand, and take over the management for you. The company's called Plex Doctor. You can check us out at plexdr.com, or reach out to my partner Thierry at 514-709-6397.
Fred, Martin, where do people go to find you?
Well, if you have a mortgage to renew this year with like 60% of the Canadian, and you need some good advice, you could reach us at fredandmartin.com. You just go online and you tap fredandmartin.com, and you could book a meeting with our calendar directly, as well as like LJ, which is the best place, fredandmartin.com.
That would be fredmartin.com.
If you missed anything, you can listen to the show in its entirety on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. For LJ, Fred, and Martin, I'm Robin. Have a great Sunday.
Go Pats!
Kara here from The Kara Golden Show. If you're not using Ironclad for contracts, you could be leaving millions on the table. Ironclad's AI instantly surfaces what matters: renewal dates, pricing terms, and obligations, so you can act quickly before opportunities slip away. That's why they're trusted by great brands like OpenAI, L'Oreal, Salesforce, and so many others. Find the savings hiding in your contracts at ironcladapp.com/podcast. That's ironcladapp.com/podcast.